Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about the jazz standard All of Me, made famous by many including Louis Armstrong, Django Reinhardt, Billie Holiday, a lot of the greats, if not, well, not all of them, but a lot of them recorded or played All of Me, and it's a very commonly called tune at a jam session. A lot of vocalists will do it in the key of C or the key of F, so it's a good one to transpose to F to practice your transposing. Of course, you can do that in iReal, but really, it's a good idea to have songs, these jazz tunes memorized, especially common tunes like All of Me. If don't stress out about that if say you're like taking a jazz ensemble course or something like that. But as a jazz musician, it's definitely one that's recommended to have memorized, especially if you're going to jams and that sort of thing, where a singer or horn player or more traditional jazz musician might show up and want to play. I have this written out already because I tried it. My first video first take didn't go so well, so I have this written out from there. This is a scale that you can use throughout the entire form, throughout all the chord changes. Not saying that it pairs well necessarily with everyone, but it really fits, especially if you used it consistently throughout, or even in certain passages like turnarounds, or if you want to repeat a phrase, you can take notes from the blues scale and patterns from the blues scale, licks from the blues scale, and use them, even if they don't align perfectly with a chord in the song. So don't feel like you have to fill out the changes, the chord changes, fill out the chords throughout the entire song while you're soloing. You can fall back on this as you could call it a safety net, but really it's I would use it even when I know where I am in the song, just because it's a great sound. I have the arrow on the E flat because that's the minor third. That's the blue note that makes it a blues scale and not just a C major pentatonic scale. Otherwise, it's C major pentatonic. I'm going to play it so guitar players can see the fingering, but also so you can hear it. You can really hear that cliche lick. Okay, so C major blues scale is something to fall back on. Wouldn't hurt to take a screenshot of that or write it down, pause the video and write it down. Okay, at this point, what I'm going to do is outline the arpeggios in All of Me. So the first thing, of course, C major blues scale, arpeggios throughout the song so that you know the exact notes you're playing in each chord. It's a way to construct the chords. It's a way to also play the arpeggios throughout the solo and adapt them to your instrument. If that's something you're already comfortable with, feel free to skip ahead in the video to my next part, which I'm going to talk about more harmonic analysis in relation to the key. In other words, I'm going to talk about what chords go well, what chords are in the key of C and what chords are outside it, and what specific notes are outside of the key of C, so you know what notes are really important in order to outline the chord changes. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. So let's start with the first four chords. We have a C6. We're doing a 6 because the A harmonizes nicely with the first melody note, which is the C. It harmonizes much more nicely than a B would if it were a C major 7. So I'm going to stop talking and go ahead and put in the notes in that chord. C, E, G, so we have what's called our C major triad. And we add an A. The A is a 6. It's the sixth degree of a major scale. If we have a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And if we put a number on each of those, A is the 6th note of the scale. Okay, you might hear a 6th chord, and that would be an A minor, built off the 6th note, 6th degree of the major scale. Okay, so we have a C6 for 2 bars. And then our next chord is an E7. Of course, we're using the original key of C. We could also call this a 3 major. This contains the notes E, G sharp, B, and D. D is the flatted 7th, which I talked about a lot in the blues video I did yesterday. It's also on my channel. And by the way, to find these videos, you'll probably have a lot easier time if you click subscribe, and that would also would help me out, gain more followers, and eventually maybe get paid for some of this. So do click subscribe and like the video if you find this information useful. The G sharp to D, something I wanted to mention in my last video but didn't. That's a tritone. So we could also think of that as an A flat to D. That might be something that's more familiar because that would be A flat's the flat 5 of G. A flat's the flat 5 of D, excuse me. So G sharp to D is a tritone. That's partly what gives the dominant 7 chord its tense sound. That tritone is very sort of, very kind of unresolved. Moving on, we have the notes in A7. A7 contains the notes A, C sharp, E, and G. The interesting thing about all of me is on these 7th chords, anytime you have this type of movement where you're moving a 4th higher, you can think of that as, the thirds are extremely important because the 3rd here is a leading tone of the next chord. So that's a leading tone of A. Leading tone is half step below the tonic or the root. So that actually changes the G there. So it's a really nice one to emphasize, especially if you're bringing out the changes. Another reason, which I'm going to talk about later, is E minor is diatonic to C. In other words, E minor fits inside the C major scale, whereas E7 does not because of the G sharp. You might remember earlier, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C are the notes of a C major scale. G sharp's not in the C major scale. So that would be a sharp 5 of C. That brings tension because it takes us out of key, and it also sets up the A7 really nicely. So really important note to play. I'm not saying you have to play that note. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But it's a good one to play if you're trying to really follow along with the harmony. The C sharp's a really important one as well because of where it's going next. They say melody's about where you've been, harmony is about where you're going. I've never really thought a whole lot about that as far as the melodic side, maybe because I'm playing more of a harmonic instrument. But I do see the merit in terms of repeating phrases and that sort of thing, and maybe that's what they're getting at. The C sharp leads very nicely into the next chord, which is the D minor. Again, that's the leading tone. And of course, our new tone that we're moving into, that we're resolving into, is the D minor. So C sharp is a half step below D. That's the leading tone. Another really important note to hit if you're trying to fill out the changes. Okay, so I got a little off there. Sorry. D, F, A, C. Once I start talking about jazz, it's hard for me to stay in one place. But I'm going to focus on trying to just give you the notes of the chord. So D, F, A, and C are the notes of a D minor 7 chord. Very commonly played as a D minor 6 here because it's not going to a G7, which would really almost necessitate a D minor 7. But because it lies there for a minute and then it goes basically it goes out of key after that slightly. So at that point we would be fine playing a D minor 6, and in fact it would be very stylistic, because All of Me is sort of old school. It's early 20th century, so it could almost be, well, it is played in traditional jazz settings, so it has more of that traditional jazz affiliation. So D minor 6 would have the notes D, F, A, and B. I can't remember who I was talking to the other day about how it's in jazz, minor 6 is the major 6 of D. If that's confusing in any way, just ignore it for now. But in when we think of the D minor scale, if we think of the 6, we would think of B flat as being the 6, but we're just assuming it's B when we say minor 6. So raised 6 or a major 6. So D minor chord with a major 6. If that's confusing, just brush by it and maybe look at some theory videos. There are so many good ones out there, and I'll at some point I'll probably post something which will be relevant to that. So moving on, I'm going to clear up some space on the board here, just so you can see it a little better. The next chord is an E7, and we've actually already done that chord. So instead of spending time writing it out, I don't want to make the video too long so people don't watch it because it's like an hour long. And also I have a life too, or so I'm told. So E, G sharp, B, D would be the E7, which comes after D minor. And then we go to an A minor chord. A minor has the notes A, C, and E. That's our minor triad. Now at that point, again, just like the D minor chord earlier, you could play a minor 7 or a minor 6. You know, a lot of it depends on what other folks are playing. If you're in a larger group or a large ensemble, then you might want to just be careful, really have your ears open so you're not clashing with somebody else. But even if you're in a small group, say if you're accompanying another musician, realize that what you do could either determine what they do. So if they're playing maybe more Dorian material, then the minor 6 might be a nice choice. If they're sort of playing more traditional style, the minor 6 might be a nice choice for that. Minor 7 might be nice, especially if you hear the minor 7. So A minor. So we got A minor 7, which has the notes A, C, E, G. A minor 6, A, C, E, F sharp. So that's A minor 6. D7. At this point, we probably do want to play an A minor 7. I wasn't thinking far ahead enough. At least in the next measure, because there are 2 measures. So in the second measure of A minor, it might be nice to play an A minor 7 just to really give a nice clear distinction between that chord and the D7, because A minor 6 is another way to play D7. So D, F sharp, A, C. And by the way, with my asides, if you're getting confused by them, just ignore them and focus on the notes of the chord. Again, screenshots, taking notes, pausing the video to play it, all good ideas. D minor 7 to G7. This is, by the way, A minor 7 to D7 is a 2-5 in the key of G. G major scale works over those chords as far as soloing. D minor 7 to G7 is a 2-5 in the key of C. C major scale works over both these chords when you're soloing. D, F, A, C. We're not doing a D minor 6 here because it's too similar to G7. It'd be like we were playing the G7 the whole time. And we want to give G7 its moment in the spotlight. G, B, D, F. I'll notice that these are all natural notes. That's a little clue as to why they fit nicely in the C major scale. G, B, D, F, 1, 3, 5, 7 of your G7 chord. By the way, don't feel like you have to voice these in order if you're playing a chordal instrument. Same with a melodic instrument. Don't feel like you have to play these in order. You might find B, D, F, that's a diminished chord there. And then if you add an A flat, it's fully diminished. So you might find different variations and please do that. That's what makes jazz so cool, is how it lends itself to creativity. Chordal instruments, a very common move is to move these notes an octave higher, so that the first thing you hear is the G to F of the minor 7. That's just one way to revoice this chord. There's so many ways to do that to sound cool. You should experiment with all of them. Really get them all in your ear so you can use them whenever you want to. Have the freedom to make a auditory decision. Okay, so that's the first half of the tune. Rather than go back through the other ones, since I already went over those, I'm not going to go over those again. But we do have C6, E7, A7, D minor occurring one more time. This time, instead of going to E7, we start a walk down, which is F major 6 or 7. I'm going to give you both. I think both are fine chords to play. F major 7 is F, A, C, E. F major 6 is F, A, C, D. I just do E minor in the next one. You can do an E minor 7 flat 5. I'm going to give you both of those. Why not know them? E minor 7, E, G, B, D is your 7. E, G, B flat, D is your minor 7 flat 5. A7, we covered this earlier. Why not put it here while I'm writing? Gnarly looking A, C sharp, E, G, D minor 7. D minor 7 is D, F, A, C. G7 is G, B, D, F. And then we have our turnaround, which I believe is C6, E flat diminished. I think that's the only one I haven't mentioned before, so I'm going to go ahead and mention that. So we have E flat, G flat, B double flat, which is also A, and I guess we could call it D double flat, which is also a C. If we think in terms of the N harmonic note, that just means we're calling, it has two names. Obviously, you could call B double flat A. We are dorks, that's why we use a double flat. We want to seem smarter than we are. That's the only reason. Actually, the reason is because we want to keep it the one note of the chord, the 1, 3, 5, and the 7 of the chord. So that way it's consistent, especially when writing out music. If you're notating chords, you'll see why we do it this way. Okay, so the A and the C. First, well, let me back that up. So these 4 notes comprise a diminished chord. If we want to play inversions of that, well, let's start on a G flat. We have G flat, A, C, E flat. Exact same notes, we just started in a different place, and I probably mentioned in another video. On the guitar, we just move that shape around every 3 frets. So one way to play, ooh, so that tune, I'm not going to deal with that now. I'll have to tune in a second. Anyway, so we have C to E flat. We could also play this as C diminished, A diminished, G flat diminished. Go into our D minor 7 and G7. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about harmony now, other than just the notes of the chord. But if you're looking at what you want to be able to do is look at a piece of music, determine what key it's in by either knowing the music well enough to knowing where the resolution takes place so you can see where that is, or just going by the last chord, looking for where the root note is played, usually for more than a few beats. That's usually how a tune resolves. And if it's a root note being played of a chord toward the end of a song or at the end of the song, that's almost always, with very few exceptions, going to be the key that you're in, going to be the one chord with the root of the key you're in, especially in older jazz. Now, other ways to do that are just to look at the harmony and kind of determine what chords go together to make a scale. In other words, say the D minor 7 and G7, you see those two together, especially in that order, and you're going to recognize that that's a 2-5 in the key of C major. So you're going to, C major. So that's what you really want to be going for, and that's part of the reason why I like to assign a lot of different tunes to students. I think there's a lot of value even just going through a real book and kind of looking at the progressions, being like, okay, what key is this in here? Even if you're not playing, and hopefully you're playing it too. And then, of course, really listening for what the different degrees of the chords sound like in different keys. So what we're dealing with is the key of C. All of me is in the key of C. So we have C as our one chord, C major, that could also be C major 6, C major 7. I'm actually going to write that down here. D is our 2 chord, which is D minor. Could be D minor 7, D minor 6. E is our 3 chord, E minor 7. F major 7 or major 6. Use a triangle to notate that. As our 4 chord. G7 is our 5 chord. A minor 7 is our 6 chord. Our 7 chord is B half diminished. Okay, I'm going to talk about how we get that. Basically what we do is we harmonize in thirds. C, E, G, B. So that gives us C, E, G, B. Gives us our C major chord. D, F, A. This would be a C, would be the next one. So D, F, A, C is our minor 7 chord, because D to F is a minor third. If we wanted to say find out what 9 is, well, we just go a third more to E, third more in the scale. E is our 9, and so on. I'm not going to get too much into that right now, but I wanted to give a little background, and I think that's a cool way to chart it out so you can find chords really easily. Okay, so what I'm going to do is have this in the background. This is sort of in the back of our minds, because we're going to have this memorized. This is the harmonized major scale. For any study of harmony, having this memorized is really essential, where the 1, 4, and 5 are major. Think 1, 4, 5, very common pop progression, blues progression, etc. 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and the 7 is half diminished. Okay, so looking at all of me, well, the C's in key, but look, the first chord, we're already out of key. And we're not that far out of key, only by 1 note. The difference between an E7 and an E minor 7 is E7 has a G sharp, E minor 7 has a G, which of course the G is in the key, G sharp is not. So that's the note that is out of key. So in order to successfully play the changes, playing that note is important. It's the 5th degree of the A harmonic minor scale, which is a nice choice. Fits the style, the subgenre of jazz that all of me tends to illuminate. A7 could be D harmonic minor. D harm minor. Because it's the 5th degree of the D harmonic minor scale. And that's just one way to approach it. There are a lot of different variations you can use. We talked a little bit about subbing flat 5 in the blues video. The flat 5 of E is B flat. So B flat 7 arpeggio is a nice Especially, it creates more tension, which brings us into A7 really nicely. Just one idea, the flat 5 or tritone sub of A7 is E flat. So E flat 9 is a really nice choice. The 9 of E flat is an F, which is the sharp 5 of A7, which leads really nicely into D minor because it has an F in it. That's our minor third. So D harmonic minor, if you're already using that, well, you can just keep using that. You could, D Dorian's another nice choice because we are, remember, in the key of C. So kind of keeping that that tonal center in mind can be really nice. You can get some nice sounds out of that. Here we go. You could even use a D minor blues scale since it stays on the chord a while, and it gives us enough time that 8 beats on the chord really give us time to use a lot of things we otherwise wouldn't if it was just a passing chord, maybe a 2-beat chord, especially if it was a chord, say like I don't know, say if we had a B7 here. We don't, but if say we did, well, we didn't really spend enough time on that to treat it like a 1 chord, like a static chord. It's just a chord that moves here. You could even add it when you're playing chords. I actually like adding an F7 sometimes right before E7. But anyway, here I go, getting off subject again. This could be, like I said earlier, D minor 6, D minor 7. We're going to E7. Same idea here. A minor 7. That's nice and in key. You can play the C major scale there. You can also do a C major blues scale. Is a great choice there. Again, you can play the C major blues scale throughout, but that would be a really nice choice. Really outline that chord. But also C minor 7 to D7. Well, that's a 2-5, so G major scale will work. You can play off the F sharp a little more, especially when you get to the D7. If you remember, that has an F sharp in it. That's the third really nice one to emphasize, especially because we're about to go to D minor 7 where you have the F. So now we're back in C, so we could flat our F sharp, and that way we would be outlining the changes in our solo. So that's the first half of the song. You can see I'm going to go ahead and circle E7, A7, and D7 because those are not diatonic. They have notes that are not in the C major scale. It just so happens that all of those notes that are not in the C major scale, the non-diatonic chord tones, is a fancier way to say it, but it's good to know the vocabulary because you will talk to people probably who use that. They're all thirds. G sharp is the third of E7. C sharp is the third of A7, and F sharp is the third of D7. So if you kind of center around the thirds, for one thing, you'll have a theme going, and another thing, you will outline the changes really well. I'm not saying you should always do that, but that's just one way to approach it, and it would be a harmonically pleasing way to do so. So I'm just going to cut straight to the walk down. If you look on your lead sheet, you'll see that I've already covered the C6 or C major 7, however it's notated, to E7 to A7. I just covered that just now, to D minor. Now instead of going from D minor to the E7, we're going to go from D minor to F major 7, F major 6. That's our 4 chords, so that's nice and in key. F major 6. To F minor. So that's a nice place to really fill out this change, which is the A becomes an A flat. That's the third. Third is A major. Go to a minor third of A flat. I think F melodic minor is a really nice choice there. You could really do F diminished, and that would be a very effective use of diminished there. The reason is it shares with tone with the E minor we're about to go to. I call it E minor 7. You could also do E half diminished instead. I think some notated as like a C major over B maybe, or over G, over E, C major over something. There's so many ways to play that because we have this movement going around. Who knows what the bass player will play? It probably might follow those root notes, might walk somewhere else. So because there's so much harmonic movement at this point, we have a lot of options for what we can do. And a lot of it's the same kind of movement, which is moving in a direction of F6 to F minor, taking it, going down the pike is another word for this. Some people will actually substitute an F sharp half diminished here, which can be a pretty cool sound because of the way it revolves. It creates a lot of tension at first, and then the ear's like, whoa, oh, okay. They share, these two chords share the same note, except we have an F sharp here instead of an F6. You know, you got to be careful and tasteful with it. And, it can easily become too much, but maybe not. It's all, a lot of it is how you interpret it, how confident you are, how rhythmically in the pocket you are, or rhythmically interesting, all those things. Okay, so then we, at this point, you could be thinking of this as a 2-5 or a minor 2-5. So you could really be thinking D harmonic minor at this point over these chords. Notice the A7 is out of key. It's a secondary dominant because it's a 5 chord of one of the notes. Let me say that again. A 5 of one of the chords in the chord scale. And that's what a secondary dominant is. Really, you could play a dominant chord approaching any one of these notes of the scale, any one of these chords of the scale. I keep calling them notes, sorry. They are root notes, but yeah, think of these as chords. So the secondary dominant of D minor 7. So we have that C sharp again. That's not in it. That's the difference between an A minor 7 and an A7 is a C sharp. C sharp occurs in the A7. So you could bring that out in your solo to follow the harmony where that tension is created. So we have D minor, G7, C6. And at that point, you know, a lot of blues scale and turnarounds can be really nice because there's so much movement and it sort of gives a clarity to you're bringing out notes, the bluesiness of the era and of the style. And then when you do resolve it, it all fits together. So E flat diminished. Again, you could use C diminished, whatever. I sometimes use an A7 there. You could use a C7 there. You could use a D7 there because it's the same as a D7 flat 9. That's one substitution. And then we're back with our C major scale chords, 2 and the 5. I hope that was helpful. Again, subscribe if you found this useful or if you'd like to easily access other videos. Have a great day.